got our Vito clarinet. This is in for repair. Repair and maintenance. I haven't done any work to it. Works okay. I've got a Yamaha 4C mouthpiece. Classic Rico orange box. 3 reeds. Pretty similar to the setup that you would play if you were, going through for the first time. Essential Elements, Book 2. So, without too much of an introduction, let's get right into it. If you find yourself coming back to this video again and again, and you're enjoying, whatever happens in this live stream, this is happening all on the fly here, so there might be mistakes, there might be who knows what. But if you're enjoying it and you keep coming back, I really hope that you'll hit the subscribe button, like the video, leave me a comment. It's been so great seeing the comments on the previous videos that I've done in this series. So I look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I'm going to jump right in. So we're assuming that everything in the first 2 pages, at least from what I can see, is all just review. So I'm not going to go into any explanations really of anything. Just as a reminder of the way that I've been doing this previously, if it's not got a staccato on the note, I'm going to play really full value long articulations. I think that's a really important thing for clarinet players to emphasize in the beginning of their playing, rather than this really short staccato notes that we hear so often from beginners. So really long tongues every time that they occur. So here's number 1. And I think I'll do most of the repeats. Not too much to say about that one. I'm also going to try to obey the breath marks that are indicated in the music when there are breath marks indicated, such as in the first 2 here. All right. Number 2. Number 3. I experimented with some different breathing on the repeat there. I think there are a lot of ways that you could do that and have it be successful. The safest bet is probably just to breathe every 2 bars, especially since you're going a little bit slower in 4. 8 beats at a moderato it might be about the limit for you if you're just beginning playing. But if you wanted to try and stretch some of these things into 8 bars, the second line, perhaps you play through to the third bar, hold that G through to the third bar. That can be really nice. Several options, but just, a little detail to think about if you've already feel very confident with the notes and rhythms. Okay, number 4. Number 5. So something to be careful of in this one is starting in the 3rd and 4th bars. It can be really easy to clip or cut short the 2nd quarter note of the slur. And that happens a few times in this. And even the first couple of times that I played it, I think it was a little too short. So really make sure that you go all the way to beat 3. So just from the beginning to get this one little spot. As opposed to so not short, because that just sounds a little, it's hard to make the note sound really good if it's too short. And in this case, it's a full quarter note, played all the way till beat 3. Number 6. So it is written piano, but it's such a low register of the clarinet that I think you could play a little bit louder than a true super soft dynamic. Number 7. So for sure, I think you're going to want to breathe after the dotted quarter note in the 2nd full bar on both times. And then when you go back to do the repeat, I think that you definitely could breathe after the last note in the line right before the repeat sign. Like that. And in that case, you'll have to cut that 3rd beat, the last quarter note of the line, a little bit short to give yourself enough room to take a good breath. Number 8. So the dynamics in this are great. I really like the way that they're used in number 8 here, because there's a distinction between when you diminuendo or crescendo to get to a certain dynamic versus a dynamic happening suddenly. So if you look at the 4th bar, obviously we have a diminuendo to piano. But if you look at the end of the first line, so measure 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, between measure 8 and measure 9, we're going from piano to forte with no crescendo. So if I start right from the piano in measure 5, that dynamic has to happen suddenly. So you can do that either with taking a breath before the note or without. But just make sure that you make the difference between that piano and that forte really strong. Number 9. Okay. Don't have many thoughts on that one. That first dotted half note feels really long going to 4, especially just going to a rest on 4. But make sure you really go all the way to beat 4, like we've talked about in a couple of the exercises earlier on. Okay, so with a first and a second ending here, I'm going to play both parts and take the repeat for number 10. So I'll even try to count off so that you can play along with whatever part I'm going to play A first, you could play B, etc. 1, 2, ready. Now I'll play the bottom part. 1, 2, ready. Okay. On to number 11. Chroma-Zone. That's funny. Okay, so for playing the chromatic scale, especially looking at the first measure here, every time, well, it only happens once, but for the first 2 measures, I am going to be particular about playing the D sharp with this fork, which needs a new cork on it. So I'm going to play that with my left hand, and when I come back down in the second measure to play the E flat, that's when I'm going to use this fingering. So I'm going to use both this on the way up and this on the way down. you may have seen me put some extra fingers down that you don't need in certain, in certain parts, like on the B flat. I think I did something like this the first time that I played it. Don't be concerned about that. That's just something that you'll add later to make certain notes sound a little bit different. And I'm just doing it as a force of habit right now. But as I go forward, I'll try to just play the fingerings that are given in the book unless I have a particular reason for doing something different, like with this D sharp and this E flat. Okay, number 12. Not too many, no comments about that one. Number 13. I messed up that second to last measure the second time. I think. I don't know. I'll find out when I listen back later. So I'm trying to do as good of a job as I can with the accents. I'm not sure how well they're coming through. But, I'm emphasizing the first note without thinking about putting any extra space between the first and the second note when there's two accented eighth notes right next to each other, like there are in this one. Make sure that you're playing an F sharp in the third measure. It sounds a little weird, but it's definitely correct when you get to the fourth measure. Because we're harmonizing the G there. Harmonizing the dominant. Okay. Number 14. No second endings. So I'll play through the first line, and then I'll play through the second line with a count off each time. So the dynamic changes every time after a rest, I should say. 1, 2, ready. Okay. In this first line, that slur from long B down to F, that can be a little bit challenging, especially if there's, maybe something not perfect mechanically with your instrument. So if you need to slip a little bit of a tongue in on the F, maybe you can't even tell, but I'm just barely tonguing the front of that F when I slur down. And that's something that happens in real life playing when you go from the higher register to the lower register sometimes. this might be a case where practicing something like that is actually a good idea. Of course, it's good to practice just trying to slur too, without using the tongue to interrupt it all. But sometimes something can, you can have a little squeak or something, and just be aware that that's a little bit of a difficult thing that they're asking you to do, with no explanation from them on that. Okay, second line. 1, 2, ready. Okay. All right, so now on page 5 we finally get our first, I think this is our first explanation in this series of books of staccato and tenuto. So this says, staccato notes are played lightly and with separation. They are marked with a dot above or below the note. Pretty succinct. Some people would say that the amount of space should be half the value of the note that has the staccato on it. And that might be a valuable way to think about it, but I actually like that it's kind of simple here. Just played lightly and with separation. And I like that the first exercise here is asking you to play piano. Okay, 15. So, if I was working with a beginning student, and sometimes if I'm working with an advanced student, I actually like to hear that the air is hissing a little bit between the notes for staccato playing. So if you listen between the notes, when there's no pitch happening, there is still a little bit of air going through the instrument. I hope you can hear that. Because you don't want to stop your air just because you're playing staccato. We need to use a full, fast air stream the entire time, even when there is supposed to be a little bit of a space. You don't want to do it all with your stomach muscles and air attacks. That's something to look out for. Okay, so tenuto notes now are played smoothly and connected, holding each note until the next is played. They're marked with a straight line above or below the note. Okay. So, there's no real explanation on how to do that for either of these. So that might be a shortcoming of this book, but that's okay. So, I will think about using the least amount of tongue and touching the least amount of the reed possible for tenuto playing. So I'm thinking about starting every note in this passage that way, including the ones that are after a tenuto note that don't necessarily have a tenuto on them. So, like the first note of measure 3 needs to be started with your tongue, but the note before it is tenuto. So there's no space between those notes, even though there's no tenuto on the downbeat of beat 3. Same thing with the downbeat, well, the only note in measure 4. Same thing with the first 8th note, the open G, right before the end. So the same sort of, it's I may be over-explaining it, but the same sort of articulation to start each note in this passage that starts with the tongue. Okay, so this is our first time in this book playing A. A above the staff. So I'm just going to play it once. Oh, and actually, you're instructed to do that in the book. Practice long tones on all new notes. So I'll do something like hairpins on each note. So I'm going to start soft and get loud. And now I'll start loud and get soft. And now I'll do like this kind of shape. So that's a good way to practice long tones for not just new notes, but, you know, all of the notes that you already know. It's a good idea to practice long tones that way. For a little, you know, a little bit, a few minutes a day makes a really big difference. Okay, so here's number 17. That's a little bit tough, actually. I mean, they're asking you to play a brand new note here, and it's in the highest register that we know of the instrument so far. And yet they're asking you to play staccato, short, soft notes. That's not so easy. If I were teaching someone this, I would maybe say forget about the staccatos and forget about the piano dynamic for the first few times that you play this. And play it really connected. So that you make sure that your air is really going solidly through this whole new range of the instrument that we're working on. But that's just me. Okay, number 18. I have no creative way to suggest doing a round. This is obviously a lot more fun if you can do this with 4 other players. If you're playing along with this at home, you could start really anytime I get to any of the numbers as you're instructed in the little box above number 18. But I would suggest starting with, when I get to number 2, you start. So. And then you can start there. So I'll play through the whole thing now. 1, 2, ready. Starts on 4. 1, 2. I made a little bit of an error there in measure 4. It's at the bottom of a diminuendo, and I'm taking a breath between the F and the C, but the C should still start soft. If, possible, even softer than the F. But since it's a register change and you're taking a breath, it can be really easy to come back in on that C really loud, which is what I did. So I'm going to play that one more time and try to correct that. 1, 2. So that was a little bit better. Still not perfect, but I'm going to move on for now. That's a detail that you want to make sure you have really accurate, especially since it's around and you don't want the wrong sorts of things popping out of the texture when you have everyone playing. Okay, number 19, Sight Reading Challenge. I'm sight reading this whole book, so I'm not going to read that little explanation. I'll leave that to you. Glad I didn't make an atrocious mistake. There was a squeak in there, which sometimes can happen. Not the end of the world, unless it's happening like all the time. Maybe it's something that you should address, but I'm not going to talk about it now. And I'm not going to play that again, even though it was a little less than perfect. I'm going to move on to daily warm-ups on page 6, starting with number 20. So since there's fermatas in this one, I'm going to, there's fermatas and there's double bars. So I'm going to play each fermata quite long. Like maybe I'll try for almost as long as I can hold the note, and we'll see what that feels like. And then I'll take a good, maybe, rinsing sort of a reset breath whenever there's a double bar, and start with my best breath on the first note after the double bar. Since this is a daily warm-up and not a piece in the book. So, since there's no dynamic written for these first 3, actually, in this daily warm-up block, I would say it's a good idea to practice all of them at varying dynamic levels. So you go through, you could maybe even just go through 20 until the first fermata piano, mezzo forte for the second fermata, forte for the last one. Just an idea. I'm going to treat 21 the same way. I'm going to take a nice pause and a breath every time there's a double bar. every time it's just having you add the register key to pop up to that 12th. I'm thinking about putting a little bit more support in from down in my abs. So I think you'll actually be able to see what I'm doing there. That's a really good idea to start to build a connection to your best support from as low down in these muscles as you can manage. All right, number 22. So I'm playing with a legato tongue on these eighth notes, even though the tenuto is not written. Before I do this nice, beautiful chorale, I just want to take my reed off, make sure that it's still looking semi-okay. It's a brand new reed. But it sounds like it's getting a little spitty for my taste. So I just wanted to re-wet it a little bit and take off maybe some of the excess moisture that was pooling on the back, or at least that's what it felt like was going on to me. Maybe a little better, maybe not. We'll see. Number 23. So I'm really going for, almost as much diminuendo as I can manage when there's a diminuendo underneath a fermata, like there is for the first 3 fermatas. And I think that's all I have to say about that one. I took a little bit of time at the end, slowed down a little bit. That's not written, but it's something that, you might do if you were playing that. I think it's an appropriate option. Okay. Moving on to number 24. Oh, look, there's explanation of what retardando means after 24, so I'll read that when I get there. 1, 2. So I added a little bit of a sudden dynamic change where there was not supposed to be one in measure 4. So maybe I should play that again. That's a little bit better. We do want to experience really big differences in the way that it feels and the way that it sounds when there's, like, on measure 4, you're going from staccato to legato for the second half of the phrase. And then in the second line, you're going from forte to piano. So those are really big dramatic differences. So emphasize them. Okay, so before we go on to 25, retardando or retard means gradually slower. And for this exercise at the end, it says watch your director. I don't have a director, and if you're practicing at home, you won't have a director, so it's up to you how much time you take. I'm just going to do one version of that when I get to the second ending here. 25. Maybe I shouldn't have taken so much time at the end because I felt like I was running out of air a little bit, but that worked out okay. You do want to make sure that you have enough air to hold a fermata over a whole note, which will be pretty long. Okay, on to number 26. In the first ending, I think when I played the B natural, I went for this fork fingering. That's something that I do sometimes just as a force of habit, but using the middle finger is totally fine there. 27. That is a little bit of a tricky thing that they're asking you to do with that breath mark. So you want to take a breath, yet stay strong. And I'm talking about the only breath mark in the piece, which is on the last measure of the first line. And it's part of the reason that I made some sort of a strange mistake going into the second line. So I'm going to do that again and pay attention to the way that I take a breath and kind of, I'm going to try to release the sound like up rather than tapering off and getting quieter. I'm going to try to release at the loudest point to take a good breath. That was a decently executed version of what I'm talking about. It's a really fine detail sort of a thing, but something that it would be a good idea to start thinking about earlier, like when you're first going through this book, than later on. Okay. Key changes. Nothing I need to add to that. 28. Yeah, just pay attention to that rhythm. You know, the eighth note syncopation, eighth note on the first beat, emphasizing the and of one every time that happens, which is all over the place in this. And then they throw in the more conventional dotted quarter note, eighth note, quarter note, always for the second to last bar of the phrase. So just keep an eye out for that rhythm. Okay, 29. Again, we're asking for a little bit of a tricky thing here, which is these staccatos at a soft dynamic. At least we're just starting at a soft dynamic, so we can get louder as we go up, because there is a crescendo. By the way, you know, there's an explanation of dynamics here. I often prefer to say diminuendo rather than decrescendo. Means the same thing, but just in case, you know, I say that later on or have said that already and it's confusing, diminuendo equals decrescendo. Okay, 30. So very clearly just playing with the different articulations that we know over a simple scale. Nothing to add to that. Number 31. So just being aware of the key change that happens in there is the trick. Okay. So a little theory on what cut time means. I'm not gonna add anything to that. I'll clap this rhythm and I'll do the repeat, because why not? 32. 1, 2, 1. Oh man, I screwed up the repeat. I'll just do it again second time. I did it right the first time. Okay, now I'm going to play it. Correct both times, I hope. Great. 34. nothing to add to that. And then 35 will sound exactly the same, just written in cut time this time. 36. I didn't do a great job with the dynamics the first time that I played that through, but I picked it up and corrected it for the second time. So I'm not going to go back and do that again. 37. I should have snuck in a little breath somewhere, maybe before the last measure of the first line, before that A, where you're reminded to count. Because I felt like I was running out a little bit by the end of the second ending, but that's okay. So for number 38, I am just going to play it as written once, and you can write it in cut time below on your own. That's not really very creative, I'll say. It's more like a math problem. There's a very clear right answer. Just turn all the eighth notes to quarter notes is the key to that. I had a little bit of a squeak somewhere because I accidentally touched the register key. I think it was when I went to the eighth note. I'll do that one more time. That's better. Okay. We're adding mezzo piano to our dynamic range. One thing that I would say if I was writing this book is, it's not like it's not a dynamic that you've played before. In other words, when we've done, played crescendos or diminuendos previously in the piece, we've hit mezzo piano in there somewhere. It's not a particular exact decibel level where mezzo piano begins. You've already played it. Now you're just being asked to play it from the start and as a particular. So I'll do the best I can getting that across. Okay, number 40, we're clapping. We've got a syncopation, which is when the small beat is emphasized. I talked about that somewhere on the previous page. So I'll clap through this, I'll do the repeat, and hopefully I'll be able to keep my concentration up through the repeat. enough that I don't make a mistake. 1, 2, ready. Okay, playing now. All right, moving on to number 42 with this syncopation in some hopefully more interesting context. 1, 2. Okay, some history about this guy who won the Congressional Medal of Honor in 1917 for Over There. Oh, no kidding. Okay. Over There's a pretty famous song. And he wrote this song. All right. You're a Grand Old Flag, 43. I really like to dig into that E flat F sharp when it happens, because those are like the most interesting notes of the whole little tune there. Okay. So on to 44. Learning a new key, learning a new note. C sharp. The fingering that they give is, of course, right. But I'm going to practice both fingerings right now, and I think that's a really good idea for anybody to do that's going through this book. So, long tones I'll do on C sharp right now like I did before, but I'll just switch fingerings. So right now I'm going to use this right pinky as suggested by the book. Okay, now I'll do a hairpin where I go soft, loud, soft, except I'm going to hold this left pinky key right here. Hopefully the camera seems to be okay in terms of how well in focus it is. But it's the outermost bottom left pinky key. I think the chart in the book, in the back of the book, should show both. I'm just curious. Yeah, it shows both options. So if it doesn't show up really clearly on video, look at the back of the book. But I'm going to do that now for soft, loud, soft hairpin. Okay, now I'll play the scale with the fingering that they recommend. And now I'm going to practice the left hand C sharp fingering. So when I play B natural, I'm going to go to this long bottom B natural. You can see what key I'm pressing there, I think. Bottom one on the right hand side, so that then I can get to this C sharp on the left. And so on. Good idea to just practice it both ways, because you'll eventually be using both, and you want to have, you know, you want to be equally fluid whether you're using the left or the right for any of these pinky keys, really. Okay, number 45 with our new note. So since I'm talking about the alternate fingerings, I'm just going to use whatever feels most appropriate to me in the setting of any time that it occurs from now on. If there's a special note about it, I'll mention it. But otherwise, I'm going to use them sort of interchangeably now. I'm not going to play all of these exercises with alternating fingers, but that would be a good idea for you to do if you're going through this book for the first time or coming back to it again, or whatever. Anytime there's an alternate fingering, it's a good idea to practice both. I made a little mistake there. I'm going to start this over again. Some of those breaths are a little bit interesting. I would still say, you know, you want to end them strong before the breath. You don't want to diminuendo or get softer before you take a breath in either of these spots, except for maybe the second one. I don't know. It's not a very enlightening comment, but all right, let me get more particular about it. So the first breath I'm going to take, I'm going to go to the high D. And then the second breath that I take, I'm going to play the low D, maybe with a little bit of a tenuto on it, but I'm going to back away. We'll see if that works. That seems to be an okay way of phrasing it, but I think there are probably a couple of options that would work. So, going on to 46, we're learning the low C sharp now. I'll do my usual little long tones on that note. Well, I did soft, loud, soft, but you know all the other variations, and you're smart enough to figure out more on your own. So I'm not going to play everything possible right now. I'll just go on to number 46. the second ending wrong. All right, so I'm going to take from the pickups back to the beginning. So the last 3 eighth notes of the first ending. I'm going to do the second ending the right way. I should probably play that through again all the way since I made a little mistake. And that last note, the D, is written as an eighth note, so it should be shorter. That's something that I talked about earlier, a tendency that you want to watch out for and not do. But in this case, it's actually what you're being called upon to do by the way that it's written. Okay, number 47. So, a disagreement that I have with this book and many books is on the way that you learn F sharp. Here, you're being asked to do the chromatic fingering, which is thumb and then your bottom 2 trill keys. So I'll do it as written and then I'll have my alternate explanation. Okay. I really disagree with what they're asking for here. It's crazy to me. Okay, I'll do it the way that it's written. So starting on F sharp with your first finger and then going to F natural in the second measure as a flip. I'm making mistakes because I'm thinking about this. That's the way I would do it. I have to play through it once as written, as you would play it in the, if you were just starting off doing this, based on the way that the book is telling you to play this. Got to make it through. Okay. So, for me, when we're talking about this F sharp versus this F sharp and how to move around in that neighborhood, the rule of thumb is that when you're going up, so you're going up in pitch, so F, F sharp, G, you use this first finger F sharp. Sometimes you might need to use the chromatic fingering depending on what you're playing around it. And if you're playing really fast or whatever, sometimes you need that. But for me, going up, I typically go to this F sharp. And on the way down is when I use this with the side keys. So, based on that rule, and that's like a not very well thought out, just off the cuff kind of explanation. So for this spot, I would actually start, in my way of thinking, I would start on this F sharp with the bottom two trill keys. And then flip. Which means that when you go back to the beginning from the first ending, you need to prepare yourself to land on that F sharp. That's really, maybe splitting hairs and overthinking, especially for like a beginner book like this. But, if you really get into this habit, I think it can trip you up later on down the road until you relearn. I think I'm going to do a video just on that and on some of the things that I would say about chromatic fingerings, such as the D sharp, E flat thing that we talked about earlier in the little Chroma-Zone exercise a few pages back. So going forward, when I encounter this, I think I will go for the way that it's written in the book. But there's a little explanation of my preference, which I think I may have already gone into when I recorded the first playthrough of the first book in the Essential Elements books. But it's a topic that I'm passionate about, so. Anyway, number 48. Playing the same sort of thing at the beginning, but I'll do it as written. Oh, so actually this is exactly the same. It's just written in cut time. Okay. On to 49. I probably could have made more of the dynamics that are in there, but that's okay for now. I'm going to go on. Okay, so clapping with a repeat. Got to keep my focus up. 1, 2, ready, and. I'm going to do it a little bit slower. I'm not a percussionist. Clapping 16th notes that fast. This is maybe a little tough. They should give you, I think, a beats per minute marking here, like an actual number, so that you're not like trying to clap 16th notes way too fast. Nice and slow. 1, 2, ready. See, because really it's easier. It's a lot easier to tongue that faster than it is to clap 16th notes. So that kind of sets you up weirdly from my perspective. But I'm going to do the same tempo, or roughly the same tempo, for 51 where I'm actually playing. And notice that, you know, for this one and for the next few, it looks like on this page, since this is our first time doing 16th notes, they're asking you always just repeated. I'm playing with a really still legato tongue. I'm not trying to put a lot of space. I'm not trying to put any space, rather, between the 16th notes. So I'm really thinking of the way that I started the notes when they introduced tenutos. That's how I'm starting every single 16th note. So very little movement, very light, small amount of tongue touching a small amount of the reed, and moving only a little bit. I think they could do some kind of an explanation on that for these books, because articulation is kind of similar across all of the wind instruments. Similar enough that you could, you know, mention something like that. And also the really important thing to make that work is you have to keep your air support steady, if not increasing a little bit even, throughout the whole line. 52. That's a little weird. Just made a little mistake with the rhythm there. Okay, so for this duet, I will play with the repeat. And now it says moderato, but if you look that up on a metronome that has those markings, I think that's going to be a little bit fast for somebody that is first playing 16th notes. So I'm going to play even slower than I played the last two exercises. Like right about there. One. Okay, and now the bottom line, same tempo. 1, 2, ready. Okay, on to 54. 1, 2. All right, so talking about breath support, I will definitely recommend breathing after the first dotted half note, the second dotted half note, and then in the second line, I would say breathe after the quarter note with the accent on it. So I'll do one more time, maybe a little bit faster just to get through it. A little bit faster with the breath marks that I'm recommending. And the first two will be very obvious. The second one, or the third one, maybe not so much. That's why I'm making a particular note about it. Because if you don't take that breath and then you need it, you can resort to maybe some bad ways of playing those 16th notes and struggling to make it to the end, rather than really feeling like you have enough gas in the tank. 1, 2. Okay. 55. I might have played through that a little bit faster than you would if you were just going through it the first time. So let me do it once again. Ooh, not like that. That might be a little bit more reasonable of a speed. Okay, so here we're at the performance spotlight section of the book, and I'm just kind of looking ahead to see how much of this we have left. I'm not sure if I'll get through the whole thing today. Might have to split this into 2 or even 3, like the last one I had to split into 3. Okay, so performance spotlight, meaning that you won't always have the melody in these because they're arrangements for an entire band. So we'll see how they sound. All right, 56. Ooh, I didn't resolve that the right way. I gotta go back and do it again. Okay. Now an arrangement of the Thunderer, Great March. tired in the face here after, an hour plus. I don't know how long I've been going. Maybe not an hour plus, but let me see. Let me do that again to get a much better ending. I'll go from the last 4 measures of the last line, and then I'll do the DC, go back to the beginning, and finish at the end. Tough to end really strong on that A sometimes, especially when you're using a little bit of a different setup than you're used to. In my case. Okay, so 58. We're going to have to count our way through some rests. So I'm going to start with 3 bars of rest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3. That one was not particularly interesting, but this one will be beautiful. So here's 59, Shenandoah. Nice little part that the clarinets have there. Not always the melody, but sometimes sort of mirroring it in certain ways. Okay, number 60. Interesting. There were a couple of spots in there where it was hard to keep track, at least for me right now, of the dynamics and the articulation differences. So I wasn't too happy with the way that I played like 19 to the end either time. So I'm just going to do that again. From 19, I'm going to just take the second ending. Yeah, so there's a crescendo going from 19 up until the forte, which actually really helps if you make sure to do that. Sometimes I would rather see a hairpin symbol drawn over the course of the whole thing than the word crescendo. So maybe that would be a good spot to take out a pencil and put that in the part, starting in bar 19 all the way up until the forte. It's a big crescendo the whole time. Okay, 61. That one's got some tricky... Well, it's really just tricky to find a good place to breathe in there. So there's one breath mark written for the entire thing. And really, it's not fair for you to have to go from that breath mark all the way back to that same breath mark when you take the repeat. That's too long. So I would recommend putting another breath mark after the G in the last bar of the first ending. So if you start from the first ending, that's a good place to take a breath, I think. And when you go back to the sign, there's no note about this, but conventionally you don't take the repeat, so you would go right to the second ending. You can quiz your band director on that. See what their instinct is. Because normally you'd have to put in the music, like, with repeat for somebody to take the first ending and then go to the second. 62. ending. Rock.com. All right. Yeah, some interesting things in there articulation wise that have not been demonstrated earlier in the book, I don't think. Especially the repeated notes, one of which is a slur and the second of which is one of which is a tenuto and the second of which is staccato. That happens in measure 7 and a couple of other places as well. So I'm, just making sure to start the staccato note really clear and crisp and ending it kind of abruptly going into that 8th rest. That's all the advice that I have on that for, right now. But fun and, a challenge to get a whole group of people to be able to do that, whether it's a lesson group or a band or whatever. That's one of those things where if everybody's really on board with it, it actually probably feels really fun and cool if you're doing it for the first time. So not a detail to just skim over. Okay, 63. Clapping this rhythm. Again, clapping 16th notes seems like a tough thing to do at a reasonable tempo. But we'll go pretty slow in order to make that work. 1, 2, ready. Okay, now with the horn and with some notes, 64. On the repeat, I may have done something weird in the second bar. That's possible, but I'm pretty confident that I played it through the first time totally right. So I'm not going to do that one again. 65. I did not do a great job of the dynamics the first time through. Started a little bit too loud. Didn't really have any room to crescendo. But I think I fixed that enough on the repeat that I don't need to do it again. Can't call that one What Would You Do with a Drunken Sailor, I guess, for the intended audience of this book. But sea shanty is also accurate. Okay, so 66, we're learning a new note here, E flat, and then the alternate fingering for C natural, which, possible to have been practicing it earlier in the book, but this is the first time we're introducing it, I guess. So I'll do some long tones here, as I normally do for E flat. Okay, and now for left C. Okay, and I would make a little edit to the instructions for measure 6 or for exercise 66. They tell you to use the left hand C natural that we just learned, starting in the third measure, and they really only tell you to use it one time. I would use it every time you play a C in this exercise. So before I even start, I'm going to just make sure with my left pinky that I'm touching the right key. I can feel it with my left pinky, and I can feel with my right pinky that I'm on the E flat. And they're not going to move the entire time, except to press down the key. But they're not going to leave their home bases here, so to speak. Okay. And the same rule is going to apply for number 67. I'm not going to move my fingers away from, I'm going to use the left C every time there's a C. And all you need to do with either pinky is left C, right E flat. So those pinkies are just going to live there for 67. Oh, but first we're learning B flat now. So B flat, first two fingers with bottom trill keys. So I'm going to do my long tones here. Okay, so now before I start, I'm going to feel with my left pinky that I'm on the C, and feel with my right pinky that I'm on the E flat. Those are going to stay there. Nice. All right. 68. You know, for me, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to keep my left pinky on this C the whole time, and I'm always going to play left Cs for this exercise. You could move around, and they tell you the one place that you really need to use left C, but for me, it's just going to be easier to keep my pinkies there the whole time. But I'll quit harping on about that and play Bill Bailey. Probably could have breathed a little bit more frequently in there. Sound is getting a little shaky in some spots, but it's always nice to have a little talking break and a little tea break between some of these exercises. Almost out of tea. Might be time to call it a night soon, I don't know. Okay, 69 clapping. 1, 2, ready, and. Playing now. I made a mistake, but I was thinking about something. I made it all the way through 4 measures and then took a breath. Talking about keeping the air support up while you're playing 16th notes, it might be better to breathe at the end of every bar. So I'm just going to play this one more time like it's the second time, but I'm going to breathe after beat 4 of the first 3 bars. And then, of course, at the end when I'm done playing. You could experiment with breathing after every bar, breathing after every 2 bars, or maybe even making it all the way through 4 bars. Whatever is most comfortable and whatever gives you the best use of keeping a constant airstream going through all of these articulations. 71. I like that one. 72 now. Maybe with an even softer articulation than what we've had for the last couple of exercises, since this is now a dance, so a little bit lighter. Oh, and we're in a different key, so Fs are natural. And that's a sudden dynamic change at the end. Really, all of the dynamic changes in this are sudden. So your mezzo forte for 6 bars, 8 bars rather. Then you take a breath, suddenly piano, 2 bars, and then suddenly forte for the last 2 bars. Make a really big difference of those dynamics, even in the light articulation. Okay, 73. I'm going to just start that again. On to 74. And, you know, again, I'm going to always play left Cs when they're in this. Doesn't, This one actually, it doesn't matter at all. You know what, I'll play right Cs. That might be something that, you know, if you're new to the clarinet, that might be your natural way of playing would be to switch like this. So I'm going to do it like that. But you could also practice, like we talked about earlier in the B flat scale, just keeping left C, right E flat. But I'll use all right here, because why not? Definitely something a little funky with the B flats on this particular clarinet right now. But I think it's more important to really go for the accents and maybe have a note come out a little flat than to back off and have everything always sound super pretty and perfect. Okay. Rallentando. I don't, you know, I'll have to look this up later, but I don't totally agree with their definition of rallentando. Gradually slower, and then it says same as retardando. I would say rallentando is even more exaggerated than a retard. But the last time I looked that up was, I don't know. So maybe I'm on a wrong assumption. But for me, I usually see rallentando and I think it's even more exaggerated, even slower than a retard. But the same basic idea. So I'll play the first line of 75 and then I'll play the second line, counting in each time. 1, 2, 3. Second line. 1, 2, 3. One thing that I didn't like about either time that I played that is that the mezzo forte really should stay all the way up until after you've arrived on the last note with the fermata on it. Because I've been playing for a while and I'm a little bit tired, I seem to be suddenly a dynamic level lower on the last 2 bars each time. That's not quite right. But I'm not going to do it again because I don't think it would be convincingly much better right now. 76. on to 77. Now, this is the first time that we have articulated, I believe it's the first time that we have articulated 16th notes that are moving. For starters, I would recommend trying to slur this one. So only tongue when you have a repeated note, which only is, only happens a couple of times, at least for the first line. So I'll just do the first line all slurred just for practice. That's a good way to practice before, just practice the technique and the rhythm before adding in the tongue. So now as written. If you wanted to practice the 16th notes by themselves, it would be a good idea to start slurred and just go. Or like if you look at the second line. It can be helpful to practice articulated spots slurred first and then adding the tongue later. All right. On to 78. Perfect segue to going from talking about slurring 16th notes to number 78. I don't have anything to add to that one. Okay, 79 now. Might have played a wrong note. Didn't remember to check for F sharps, so I'm not sure if I had that correct. That can be a spot where you might get thrown off in the second line to have to start tonguing on the and of the beat after a held note like that. So if you just go from the second line. Just be ready for that syncopation there. Okay, 80. Ah ha ha. I played a wrong note. This time it's supposed to be an F natural. So I didn't do a great job of looking ahead for dynamics. And in the second line, I only saw a P out of the corner of my eye. So I sort of was in between mezzo piano and piano for those two bars of the first two bars of the second line. But that's okay. 81, clapping again. Okay, introducing the dotted 8th 16th note. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. So really what's going on in my head the entire time, and especially during the dotted 8th 16th note, is the 16th notes. In my head I'm going 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 to make sure that I really get when that happens. And I'm going to do the same thing right now when I play it. When you play it, you'll want to breathe somewhere in there, but I'm forgetting to. Okay, I will play all 3 lines of this with a count in. Maestoso, so, sort of long, sort of slow. That's not a technical definition. 1, 2, ready, and. So again, keeping the 16th notes in my head the entire time, and especially for the last 2 bars, that's going to be the key to keeping everything really together with the people that you're playing with. Or if you're playing with me right now, as you play the first line and I play the second. 1, 2, ready. On to the third line for me. 1, 2, ready. Something that you might do to practice this articulation is play actually all 16th notes in the dotted 8th 16th note figure before the just in the last 2 bars. So I'll go back to the first part and I'll show you what that would sound like. So this time I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to accent the last 16th note. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it. So you're training your brain to be able to understand the subdivision while you're playing. just one idea of how you might practice something like that. Okay, 84. So I did the dynamics very, very backwards, but I liked the way that I played it anyway. I should have been softer for the opening and then louder for the part after the second ending, but I sort of did that, totally the opposite. But I'm not going to do it again. 85. It's kind of tough to do that diminuendo in just those 3 notes, that one beat, when it's written in the second line. So I'm going to just start at the second line and try to do a better job of that. That might be an effective way to play it. I'm not sure how much better that came across. But that's a tricky little detail of that. Probably would be easier to master slower, but I'm not going to go back and do that just now. Or maybe I should. Okay, yeah, I will, actually. So if you want to build dynamics in a short space of time like they are here, it's good to slow it down like a lot. So I'm actually going to play just one time, starting on the first measure of the second line, so the 5th measure, and I'm going to be counting the 8th notes. So bum 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 ba da da, just so that I get the dynamic pacing right. And I would, if I was really practicing this, I would repeat that way of doing it a few times, maybe gradually speed it up. And hopefully that'll build a really clear sense of how you achieve the dynamics into the way that you play it, so that you can do it a little bit more automatically when you speed the tempo up. But I'm not going to do that process right now on camera. So, on to 86. I should do that again because I made a mistake. Man, same sort of mistake in the same place. I'm going to go after the repeat. How far can I get tonight? Just want to look ahead for a second here. Okay, I think I can get a couple more pages here. So we are on, yes, 87, daily warm-up. Play at a very slow tempo. Okay. I like that it starts on that open G like that, because the idea, I think, here is that you're keeping the exact same sound every time you go back up to the G, despite the fact that you're always coming at it from a note with a little bit more resistance as you go down the horn. So use your ear there and really make sure that you're matching that beautiful G that you established in the first bar of 87, since it is a tone builder. Okay, 88. It's not as easy as it looks. Similarly to one of the earlier daily warm-ups that I talked about today, this morning, whenever you're watching this, might be a good idea to tongue the lowest note when you're asked to slur down in the second bar, the fourth bar, the last bar. That might be a good idea to tongue just really a little tiny bit to make that pop out right away. Good to practice both ways. Totally pure slur to try to get it, and adding that little bit of articulation, but that's kind of a nuanced thing that's easier to describe when somebody's, when there's a live student here, not when I'm just trying to describe it to a camera. Anyway, on to 89. Gotta get that right rhythm from the beginning. Oh, this is the first time they're throwing in tongue 2, slur 2. Gotta do this one again. So just make sure you're aware that the articulation of the 16th notes changes every 2 measures. You'll be okay. Chorale, number 90. super happy with all of my dynamic pacing in there, but I'm moving on. '91. Should have kept it a little bit louder at the end, but other than that, that was okay. I really like in the fourth bar that there's a crescendo to arrest. I think that's an important detail to make sure that you're practicing when you do this. So just for to hear that again, just from the beginning. So ending, strong. The strongest point of the note should be the last point for the way that that's written. Okay, on to 92. We're learning a new note. G sharp, A flat. Just one long tone to get that started. All right, 92. Well, E naturals. That was a good squeak. Oh, and it starts on an A natural. That makes a lot more sense. Fun one. 93. Check the key signature. Okay, I will. Yeah, all right. Sticking thumb ring here. So sometimes I'm sure you're hearing that, but just wanted to mention it. 94 scale study. Simple F scale here. So, when you start this, the first four measures are very, very simple, very easy. Make sure that you don't play faster than you can play the second line. where it gets a little bit more complicated, a little more articulation, faster moving notes. Good idea is to look at and sort of think your way, hear your way in your ear through some of the second line, at least like a measure, at a tempo that you can hear and feel really clearly before you begin the first four measures. On to 95. Oh, interesting. That's like a really new national anthem, 1974. That seems really late for your country to come up with a national anthem, but that's cool. So this is the... All right. First time that there's an ah tempo in here, so let's see if I can make that really clear. It's a pretty national anthem. Okay. Arrange My Country 'Tis of Thee. I'm not going to do that right now because it would kind of give away the answer. You're supposed to figure it out by ear. So I'm not doing that. And it's not just because I don't want to embarrass myself by trying to do it and screwing it up on the first go. It's really because I think you should have the experience of figuring it out by ear by yourself. They gave you the first note anyway, and the key. So, all right. Coming to the end of tonight's session, I think these are gonna be the last 2 pages that I do today, and then I'll have to come back and do part 2. 97. That's a great tune. Okay. Mozart now. I thought I was going to say something. I'm going to leave it out because it sort of is addressed a little bit in the second page here, or, well, the 21st page. All right, F sharp. Again, you know, F sharp can be played with your right or with your left, just like C sharp, the 12th above, which we already talked about. So I'm just going to do one quick hairpin on F sharp to get it in my ear. Wow, this seems really surprising to me too that it wasn't Stars and Stripes Forever wasn't named the official march of the United States until 1987. Some interesting little history in this book if you read these little blocks. All right. It's been a long time since there's been an A flat or a G sharp in the music. I feel like they might have mentioned it before starting this one, just as a little note, but not too hard in any case. 100. So right off the bat, I'm gonna say. Make sure I don't make a mistake in saying this. This is a spot where I'm going to use left F sharps because you have to use right for A flat in the second measure and in the sixth measure. So I'm going to use left F sharps leading up to that, just so that my pinkies only have one job. So they're going to both stay right there. Okay, feel left F sharp. Feel right E flat, or right A flat rather. Now, on to 101, and we're learning about 6/8. The description that they're giving you here is totally adequate for right now, so I'm not going to dive into it anymore. 1, 2, ready, and go. Okay, now playing. Definitely breathe after the fourth bar. Don't try to go all the way to the end like I just did. And there, the best place to breathe, I think, is where I did it. Right before the last note of the fourth bar. So. And so on. I hope that's clear enough. 105. again. Tricky on the breathing. Let me try this one more time. I think that might be a good way of doing it. So breathing after the second bar, trying to make it for 4 bars so that you keep going through the crescendo without having to take a breath, and then breathing before the last 2 bars. So you really only have to make it 4 bars in 1 breath, which is manageable in 6/8 here. 106. All right. And with that, it's time for me to go marching home until tomorrow, or until whenever I decide to make part 2 here. But we're leaving off at 106, so we'll pick up 107 on page 22 next time, and hopefully that'll be the end of the book then. But thanks for tuning in. See you next time.